Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the program. Greetings from Sin City. So I've been in the studio since about 6:30 this morning, and I opened up Excel, and I started to put together a spreadsheet about my trip to New York in July. And I started looking at, rental cars and stuff like that. And I was automatically hit with the fact that, oh yeah, you're going to New York. Everything's $1 bazillion. Everything is so expensive in New York. Thankfully, I have a place to stay because I was looking just for shits and giggles at like Airbnbs. Talking about like $3,000, $3,500 for a month. That is an insane amount of money. So thankfully, I have places to stay in the city with my family and outside of the city with my family. I have an uncle who just purchased some land up in the Catskill Mountains, and I'll probably be staying there on the weekends at the very least. Maybe the whole entire time, honestly. It really depends on the commute. I don't know if I'm going to take the train or if I'm going to rent a car, or hell, if I have my trail van by then, maybe I'll drive to New York. But I was putting together the spreadsheet and looking at all of the expenses and all of that stuff, and I'll tell you what, I'm glad I don't live in New York anymore. Because living in Nevada has spoiled me like it's nobody's business. We have no state tax here, everything's cheap, houses are cheap, food's cheap. The only thing that's expensive in Nevada really is gas. Besides that, the cost of living here is just, I can't even quantify it. It's perfect. I mean, Nevada is just probably my favorite state in the union. And whenever I go back to New York to visit, or I start looking to put together a trip to go to a place like New York, I realize how lucky I am to be in Nevada financially because, wow, I don't know how people do it in New York, honestly. It is just incredibly expensive to live there. So anyway, I got the spreadsheet all started. Everything's in motion. And, I'm just trying to figure out what date really I'm going to leave. I'm thinking somewhere around the 10th of July, but nothing's set in stone yet. I was looking at some, airfare, and thankfully airfare is super cheap right now. So that's definitely a bonus. So the spreadsheet has been created, folks. It's becoming a reality. And I'll continue to add to that spreadsheet as we go forward, different things that I think will help move the story, right? Different things that I might need to add, things I might need to pick up. Finally, going to have all of my ducks in a row, planning this out a bunch of months in advance so that when I get to New York, there's no kind of stress or worry or any of that. I could just focus on what's going on with this trial, focus on the podcast, and focus on bringing the story to the greatest listeners in the podcast universe. That would be you. So there's where we're at with my trip to New York and the coverage of Maxwell's trial. Just wanted to get you guys all caught up on that quick update. And I'll keep you guys informed as we move forward because the days are ticking by. And before you know it, my ass is going to be in New York, getting off a plane, eating a piece of pizza, and getting ready to cover this trial. So look how quick the days are flying by, folks. We're already in March. We are 2 weeks away from your boy being 41. That kind of sucks. But we're one day closer to this trial becoming a reality, to Ghislaine Maxwell facing up to her alleged crimes. And believe me when I tell you, I am ticking down the days. All right, so for our article this morning, folks, we're going to jump right back in and talk a little bit more Apollo Global and Leon Black. And in this installment, we're going to talk about how the United Nations, as you all know, certainly not my favorite group of people, a group of people I think are basically an organized criminal group at the UN, right? Well, they even think that Jeffrey Epstein's ties to Leon Black are too much to swallow. And they also believe that the report from the law firm did not go far enough, did not do enough to bring their fears and their second thoughts under control. So we're going to jump into this article from the Financial Times, and we're going to see what the Financial Times and authors Francesca Friday, Mark Van de Velde, and Kay Wiggins have to say about the UN and Apollo Global. Headline: Apollo's Epstein report fails to reassure United Nations fund. And I find that comical at best, right? Considering the United Nations is just populated with a bunch of thieves and scum as it is. So imagine being such a scumbag that even the UN thinks you're a scumbag. I mean, that's like Jeffrey Dahmer getting up on his soapbox and calling Ted Bundy a scumbag. Like I said, this article was authored by Francesca Friday, Mark Van de Velde, and Kay Wiggins. A report before we get started, by the way, this article was originally published on February 2nd. So I've had this one in the stack for a little while, and since there's no new news to really get to today, I figured we'd add a little more context to this conversation. So here we go. A report by lawyers for Apollo Global Management into the ties between Leon Black and the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein is not enough to remove the company from a watch list of investments that require extra scrutiny, a top UN pension fund official has said. Oh, well, that doesn't sound damning. That isn't horrendous or anything. How could you possibly have your money parked with Apollo Global and just shrug your shoulders at this? And, I get it, right? Money rules the world, and people, at the end of the day, they want to increase their wealth. And really, a lot of these people truly don't care how this money is made. Blood diamonds, big deal. War, don't care. On the backs of sexual exploitation, big deal. Cash my check. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm, being extra critical of anyone with money, because that's not the case, right? I'm talking about the 1% of the 1%, the hedgies and their friends, and the other scuzzbags that are invested with Apollo. Those people really don't give a damn about society as a whole. And if you think they care about you or your children or your dreams or your hopes, you are sadly mistaken. Go to your local bank if you have a bad credit score and try and get a loan and see how that works out for you. The banking system is installed to keep control over us. I mean, the fact that the only time you ever hear about Jesus Christ getting mad is when he flipped over the table of the tax people in the church for usury, that should tell you all you need to know about these bankers. They're doing the same thing that loan sharks for the mafia do on the streets. But instead, if you don't pay the bankers, instead of just breaking your hand, they destroy your whole entire life. The law firm Deckard said last week that Mr. Black, Apollo's co-founder, had transferred $158 million to Epstein for advice and other professional services, far more than was previously known. And we've touched on this a bunch. There is no way that money was moved for advice. Anyone who tries to tell you that with a straight face is BSing you, okay? There's no advice on this planet that should cost $158 million. No advice on this planet. The firm found that Apollo did not do business with Epstein and that there was no evidence that Black was involved in any way with Epstein's criminal activities at any time. It's pathetic. Really is pathetic. And I hate to rehash on this again, and we've talked about this a lot lately, but I feel it's important, right? Obviously, I feel it's important if we're hammering it the way we are. If we keep revisiting this topic, there's a reason for it. And that reason is I'm tired of people like Leon Black getting away with things like this. I'm tired of people like Leon Black not facing the consequences when everybody else in society has to beat to the drum. You know, we have to get going with whatever drum beat people like Leon Black and those that he financed to get into office play for us. You know, we're not dancing to our own tune. But we should be. We should have a justice system that we can rely on. A justice system that we know if we get in trouble or there's something that goes wrong, that everyone's going to go in and have a fair shake under the law. And that is certainly not what's going on here. And that's why it's comical with Maxwell as well, with her whole entire routine about how, the conditions of jail are so terrible for me. It's always about me. That's why I don't have any compassion for her. I've been very clear that I feel like the Bureau of Prisons needs to be fixed. I've been very clear that I think reformation needs to happen. But unfortunately, it's not happening, right? These are the rules that we're all playing by, or supposed to play by. And now that Ghislaine Maxwell is facing the music and she's sitting there rotting in a jail cell, now everybody's worried about if it's fair or not. Well, I have news for you, Ghislaine and Marcus and all of the other people that support you. Jail's always been shitty for poor people. You don't like the way the shit pie tastes? Well, stop baking it. Apollo was put on the UN Joint Staff Pension Fund's watch list in mid-July 2019 after reports of Mr. Black's ties to Epstein, a UN official said. So, again, in essence, this is a good thing for the UN to have a official watch list for businesses that are involved in malfeasance, right? In principle, it sounds like a great idea. The problem is this. The UN is as corrupt, or even more corrupt, perhaps, than even Leon Black. So if we're sitting here thinking that the UN is some kind of watchdog, that the UN is this body of morality that is going to make sure people like Leon Black are doing the right thing, we are all going to be sorely disappointed. Because the UN, like any other bureaucracy, is terrible. Okay? The UN, the left hand never knows what the right hand is doing. They're always up to some stupidity. And it seems like all of the officials at the UN are more worried about increasing their own wealth and trying to get a little something out of their position. Tell me the last time the UN showed up anywhere and it was like a good situation, right? They showed up and they helped out and nobody complained about people in the UN abusing and raping and trafficking kids. Very rare, right? Every time they show up somewhere, it's a whole entire shit show of crimes and malfeasance. So that's why I find it laughable that the UN, of all places, acts like they're some sort of watchdog here. Oh, yeah. What Apollo Global's doing? We can't abide by that. Meanwhile, how many people from the UN throughout the years have been involved in horrendous crimes? So talk about hypocrisy. Apollo was put on the UN Joint Staff Pension Fund's watch list in July 2019 after reports of Mr. Black's ties to Epstein, a UN official said. The $80.3 billion pension fund has invested with Apollo since at least 2013. So they have $80.3 billion, the UN. Why does the UN have $80 billion anyway? I guess that's another topic for another time. They have $80 billion invested with Leon Black and Apollo Global. 80 billion with a B, folks. $billion. So what's with all the talk, the UN? Are you going to walk the walk or just talk the talk? Because now, in hindsight, when we're looking back at this a few weeks later, you haven't bounced out of this pension yet. So, once again, seems like a bit of grandstanding by the United Nations. Speaking after the Deckard Report was published, Pedro Guazo, representative of the UN Secretary General for the Investment of the Pension Fund's Assets, told the Financial Times, "Right now, we are not exploring any additional investments with them." Well, that's a good start, huh? But again, my question is, why does the UN have $80 billion? Can somebody refresh my memory and tell me how many famines are happening around the world right now? How many people are starving in underdeveloped countries? But the UN's investing $80 billion with Leon Black? Seems legit. Almost as great as the Catholic Church, when you got the Pope up there, yelling down at everybody about giving and being charitable. Meanwhile, the Vatican's sitting on an untold amount of wealth. Why don't you open up your doors and pass out some gold there, Mr. Pope? Same shit here with the UN, right? They'll get up there and they'll talk about how they care and how they're going to show up and help people and feed people. And meanwhile, they're investing $80 billion with Jeffrey Epstein's buddy. The current outlook of the UN Office of Investment Management is that the findings of Deckard's investigation were not enough to move Apollo off the watch list, he added. Reputational risk is something that we take very seriously, Mr. Guazo said, stressing that any new investment would have to meet stringent UN criteria concerning social impact and corporate governance. Oh yeah, a lot of pretty words, folks, a lot of flowery words to make you think that they care. Meanwhile, that $80 billion is still sitting there parked with Apollo Global. Yank it. If you really care, UN, and you truly want to see the world a better place, yank your money. The UN's decision is a blow to Apollo, whose co-founder Joshua Harris had said in October that the third-party fundraising will slow over the near term as some investors await the findings of the review by the company's lawyers. Well, we know that a lot of companies have not shied away, right? And I've been taking note of these companies, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more later on. But all of these places that are still investing with Apollo, with this shroud of Jeffrey Epstein hanging over them, they should honestly be ashamed of themselves. All for an extra couple of percent of yield. You could go with a more reputable company, maybe miss out on half a point of yield or something like that, but still feel better about yourself. I know as an investor, and obviously not on this level, but as an investor, I don't invest in companies that I don't believe in. I don't invest in situations I don't believe in. If a company has this kind of ill repute, I'm certainly not parking my money with them. Apollo last week unveiled reforms designed to address investors' concerns, saying it would add 4 new independent directors and revamp its dual-class share structure to give outside investors more say in how the firm is run. Mr. Black said he would step down as chief executive by July 31st. So we see the reformation beginning, right? We see they brought on Jay Clayton, who I talked about yesterday, Trump's SEC sheriff. Certainly not a hire that I think's a good idea, but you see them trying to make steps in the direction of acting like they care, acting like they're going to fix things. Meanwhile, Black is still involved. Rowan is the CEO now, and Harris has been sidelined. Makes you wonder what the true goal of Apollo is. Making things right or continuing to protect their founder and their bud, Leon Black. Deckard had unrestricted access to all relevant individuals and documents, and the report was publicly released in its entirety, Apollo said in a statement to the FT. Excuse me, that's wrong. They had access to whatever Black decided to give them. This wasn't a subpoena by the government. Give me a break. Stop gaslighting us. It added the corporate governance enhancements proposed are sweeping and subject to corporate and regulatory approvals, will be industry leading. Those moves appeared to placate some Apollo investors, among them the UK South Yorkshire's Pension Authority, which committed almost £29 million across 3 Apollo funds between 2013 and 2019. The authority's director, George Graham, told the FT that Apollo's actions demonstrate a commitment to learning and improving from things that go wrong. What? So, the pension plan here. The South Yorkshire Pensions Authority thinks that investing their money with Leon Black is a good idea because, the Deckard Report went far enough to clear Leon Black and Apollo Global of any sort of misdeeds. What? Obviously, the leader of that pension plan is also suffering from CTE. Very, very serious condition. Too many shots to the head will have you thinking funny. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to everybody who has donated to the podcast recently, thank you folks so much. All right, everybody, I will be back later on. I don't know about a daily drop tonight. We'll see what's going on. We'll see which way the wind blows. If there's something to talk about, I'll hop on. If not, expect a couple of flashbacks, and then expect me, my beard, and my big mouth back tomorrow morning. All right, everybody, have a great night, and please, if you're going out tonight, do the right thing. Don't drink and drive.